These are the headlines we're following at this hour. South Korea marked the 70th anniversary of the armistice of the Korean War on Thursday, with President Yoon saying the country stands on the sacrifices of the UN forces. Across the border up in the north, Pyongyang also celebrated what's called Victory Day by the regime with a military parade. July is set to be the hottest month on record, with the UN chief warning that the world is entering an era of global boiling. Good afternoon. South Korea marked the 70th anniversary of the armistice of the Korean War on Thursday. Delegations from the 22 countries that fought alongside the South were in the country for the event. President Yoon said the country stands on the sacrifices of those UN forces and that the Seoul-Washington alliance will now move for global peace. Our presidential office correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
Solidarity for freedom is what the Republic of Korea stands for, grounded in the dedication of the United Nations forces who fought to defend the country. That's according to President Yoon Suk-yeol speaking at a ceremony on Thursday, standing at the Busan Cinema Center, a former military airfield in the southern port city of Busan, where the UN troops first landed to fight alongside the South during the 1950-53 war. The ceremony marked the 70th anniversary of the Korean War Armistice Agreement, which ended active fighting, and also coincides with the UN Forces Participation Day.
73년 전 자유세계의 수많은 젊은이들이 하나의 UN 깃발 아래 전혀 알지도 못하는 나라 대한민국의 자유를 지키기 위해 달려왔습니다. 오늘의 대한민국은 유엔군의 희생과 헌신, 그리고 피 묻은 군복 위에 서 있습니다.
Yoon honored the more than 1.9 million UN troops from 22 countries who came to the South's aid following North Korea's illegal invasion. Calling the UN troops the country's true heroes, Yoon personally greeted the 62 UN veterans attending the event and presented awards to two veterans, the late Thomas Colon Parkinson from Australia and Donald Reed from the US. The president vowed to never forget their sacrifices and the bloodshed to fight communist forces, which enabled the South to grow as a liberal democracy and market economy. He noted that Busan City, which saw over 1 million refugees during the Korean War, is now the world's second largest transshipment port and a global logistics hub, with the city now preparing to host the World Expo 2030 and position itself as a platform to seek solutions to the challenges facing humanity. Yoon said South Korea will ensure the value of freedom extends to the future generations.
대한민국은 국제사회의 책임 있는 일원으로서 자유민주주의 국가들과 연대하고 한미 동맹을 핵심 축으로 하여 인도 태평양 지역뿐 아니라 전 세계의 자유, 평화, 번영을 위해 노력할 것입니다.
US President Joe Biden on Wednesday had declared July 27th National Korean War Veterans Armistice Day, calling the ROK-U.S. alliance the linchpin of peace, stability and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific region and around the world. Ahead of the ceremony, President Yoon and First Lady Kim Gon-hee were joined by government officials from the 22 countries comprising the UN forces to pay their respects at the United Nations Memorial Cemetery. The burial ground in Busan is the only UN cemetery in the world. More than 2,300 people from 11 countries lie at rest there. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
A commemoration ceremony to mark the 70th anniversary of the Korean Armistice Agreement was also held in the U.S., attended by war veterans and families of the fallen heroes. South Korea's ambassador to the U.S., Cho Hyun-dong, was at the event held at the Korean War Veterans Memorial in Washington, highlighted the sacrifices made by American service members in the Korean War, saying that is what's made the alliance between the two countries possible. Expressing his deepest gratitude, he added the alliance will continue to strengthen in response to North Korea's growing nuclear and missile threats. Meanwhile, South Korea's Veterans Minister used the occasion to honor the sacrifices of the fallen heroes, who he says have led South Korea to achieve, quote, amazing progress after the devastating war. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung has the details.
A big week for South Korea as it marked the 70th anniversary of the Korean War Armistice. Speaking to Arirang News, the Minister of Patriots and Veterans Affairs Bang Min-sik highlighted the progress South Korea has been able to make thanks to the dedication of foreign veterans.
Wasn't it just ruins during the war? South Korea was able to overcome the ruins and make truly amazing progress. We want to repay our greatest gratitude to the veterans through our success.
Delegations from 22 countries, including 64 Korean War veterans, visited South Korea's port city of Busan to take part in various events. Minister Park explained there is a special reason behind Busan being the host city this year.
Busan was the wartime capital, and it was also the place where war veterans from 22 nations first arrived in this unknown country at the time. It's also very symbolic, as about 2,300 UN veterans are still buried in Busan.
With ongoing threats to global security, the minister also stressed that the Korean War delivers an important message to the international community.
For example, Russia is invading Ukraine. Even there, many government representatives, including our president, are really emphasizing the spirit of solidarity for freedom. The Korean War and the 70th anniversary are evidence that such efforts are not just words, but they have been put into action.
Park also underlined that Veterans Affairs and national defense come together, considering the fact that North Korea continues to threaten the South and the international community through its continuous provocations. The minister also told Arirang News that he feels regretful when it comes to the limited significance our society puts on Veterans Affairs today.
When it comes to veterans, people would reluctantly bow their heads to show respect. But our country isn't doing things properly if we aren't properly honoring those who sacrifice for our country. It is not just the past, but it's the future. It's the practical foundation for the prosperity of South Korea.
To show the further appreciation South Korea has toward all those who gave a helping hand, the minister vowed to create a culture where Korean people can naturally feel the importance of Veterans Affairs.
우리 참전 용사분들의 70년 전의 위대한 희생과 헌신에 대해서 우리 대한민국 국민들 아직도 또 앞으로도 영원히 진심으로 감사를 드립니다.
Choi Min-jung, Arirang News, Busan.
Across the border up in the north, Pyongyang also marked the day with a much-anticipated military parade. Russian leader Vladimir Putin also delivered a message to the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, celebrating what North Korea calls Victory Day. Our North Korean affairs correspondent Lee Dong has more.
North Korea staged a huge military parade on Thursday night as widely expected to mark the 70th anniversary of the armistice that ended the Korean War, or what the North calls Victory Day. The opening ceremony for the event started at around 8 p.m., followed by the parade, which went on for about 2 hours. Government delegations of China and Russia who had come to Pyongyang this week also attended the parade. Radio Free Asia revealed a satellite image of the military parade which showed large-scale military forces and weapons. In the image, it appears that more than 5 intercontinental ballistic missiles were rolled out in Kim Il-sung Square. And the unmanned aerial vehicles that were revealed during the parade are likely the ones that were on display at a weapon exhibition that Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Kim Jong-un had visited earlier on Thursday. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un appears to have not made a speech this time. Instead, the North's defense minister likely did so. This is the 14th time that the military parade had been held since 2012 when Kim Jong-un took power, and the 6th time that the event had been held at night. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin delivered a message to the North Korean leader on Thursday. The message included Putin's gratitude towards Kim for North Korea's support of Moscow's special military operation in Ukraine, saying that this shows their, quote, shared commitment and resolve to counter the collective West and its policy. Putin's message also said their history of bilateral ties has led to a stronger economic and security relationship. Lee Hyun, Arirang News.
President Yoon could see trade talks with the U.S. going in his favor when he meets President Joe Biden and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida at a trilateral summit next month. That is according to U.S. Democratic lawmaker Ami Bera speaking on Thursday to the think tank, the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Following media reports that a three-way dialogue will take place at Camp David on August 18th, Bera said he hopes to see tangible economic outcomes from the meeting. In particular, he pointed to supply chain cooperation, saying South Korea should be involved in a U.S.-Japan agreement which covers rare earth minerals for high-tech uses. Bera added that he expects the South Korean leader to raise concerns over Washington's Inflation Reduction Act and hinted that Yoon will maybe see some progress and some adjustments on the policy, which has been accused by ally nations of favoring U.S. companies in critical high-tech sectors. President Yoon on Friday nominated his special advisor for external affairs Lee Dong Gwan for the role of chairman of the Korea Communications Commission. If appointed to oversee South Korea's broadcast, telecommunications, and digital media outlets, he pledged to make the country a leading global player in the media industry. He also said he will prioritize fighting fake news and ensure trusted public broadcasting. However, the much-anticipated nomination has been met with criticism from the main opposition Democratic Party, who says he has already led a media crackdown and due to allegations of his son's involvement in school bullying, something he denies. He has previously worked in the conservative Lee Myung-bak administration as spokesperson and senior secretary for public relations. July is said to be the hottest month on record, with the UN chief warning that the world is entering an era of global boiling. Lee Seung-jae has more.
July 2023, even with a few more days left to go, is still set to become the hottest month on human record. That's according to the World Meteorological Organization in a report published Thursday, which noted that the heat this month has been so extreme that it's virtually certain this month will break records by a significant margin. It added that the world has seen the hottest three-week period on record in more than 100,000 years, with figures based on average air temperature across the entire world. The global average air temperature in the first 23 days of July was 16.95 degrees Celsius, far above the previous record of 16.63 degrees Celsius recorded in July 2019. In response to the alarming figures, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Thursday warned that the era of global warming has ended and that the era of global boiling has now arrived.
Climate change is here, it is terrifying, and it is just the beginning. The era of global warming has ended, the era of global boiling has arrived. The air is unbreathable, the heat is unbearable.
Stressing that the level of fossil fuel profits and climate inaction is unacceptable, Guterres called on world leaders to stop making excuses and begin making substantial changes now. Meanwhile, in response to the record heat the U.S. is experiencing this summer, U.S. President Joe Biden said at the White House on Thursday that the high temperatures will be more severe in the future, adding that no one can deny climate change. While mentioning that more than 600 deaths occur every year due to high temperatures in the U.S., he announced new steps to protect workers, including a hazard alert notifying employers and employees of ways to protect themselves from the intense heat. The latest announcement from Biden comes as nearly 40% of the U.S. population is facing heat advisories, according to a recent report by the National Weather Service. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Despite the inflation and interest rate hikes, recession fears were eased for the U.S. economy in the second quarter. According to a Department of Commerce report on Thursday, U.S. GDP increased at a 2.4% annualized rate for the April through June period. This was better than the 2% forecast by experts based on a 2% pace in the first quarter. Data from the department's Personal Consumption Expenditures Index show consumer spending increased 1.6% and accounted for 68% of all economic activity in Q2. South Korea's overall industrial production, retail sales, and facility investment all rose last month for the second month in a row. According to data released by Statistics Korea on Friday, industrial production in June increased by 0.1% from a month ago. This, however, is a slowdown from a 1.1% on-month rise posted in May. Semiconductor production logged a 3.6% on-month growth in June, but saw nearly 16% on-year fall. Semiconductor inventory also decreased thanks to improved exports. Revisions to South Korea's tax code were published on Thursday. One of the main goals is to make the country's key industries global frontrunners. Ji-young reports.
Boosting the competitiveness of South Korean companies for stronger economic growth and helping people's livelihoods. This is what the country's latest revision to the tax code published on Thursday mainly aims to do, as well as prepare for the future.
This year's tax revision has put emphasis on providing strong support for South Korean firms to better compete in the global market, including those in the Korean content industries and national strategic technology.
One of the highlights would be sharply raising tax relief for Korean content makers so that more K-dramas, movies, and reality shows can be brought to the world. After the change, for expenses spent on content production, the government will grant up to 15% of tax credits for conglomerates, 20% for strong medium-sized firms, and 30% for small and mid-sized companies. The tax code revision also aims to provide higher tax relief for firms investing in the semiconductor industry and other strategic sectors that'll drive growth for the country, known as the K-CHIPS Act. Tax credits for conglomerates investing in chip facilities will be up to 25%, and small and medium companies will be getting up to 35%. Also, there would be greater tax benefits for companies returning to the country from offshore operations by providing them 100% of income and corporate tax cuts for the first 7 years and 50% in the following 3 years. Another major part would be reducing the tax burden for small and mid-sized family businesses when it comes to inheriting them by putting more companies into the lowest tax bracket of 10%. The term for payment will also be dramatically extended from the current 5 years to 20. With all the changes, the government says the tax code revision will result in a roughly $390 million drop in tax revenue. But the finance minister explained, although it is a difficult time, the tax incentives were allocated to much-needed areas, including prompting corporate investment and child subsidies. Ji-young, Arirang News.
Now, the tax code revisions also seek to upgrade the well-being of people in South Korea as well as future generations through more tax incentives. Our Lee Soo-jin tells more.
South Korea's revision to the tax code this year includes measures aimed at boosting the local economy. The latest tax revision published on Thursday by the Finance Ministry seeks to expand tax benefits not just for newlyweds but also for the lower and middle classes.
We plan to increase support for the lower and middle classes to help the private economy recover quickly and to actively address structural issues such as the population decline.
The most highly anticipated tax revision was arguably the tax exemption on funds gifted by parents to their children when they get married. The government has decided to expand the threshold from $39,000 to around $117,000 for inheritances given by parents to their children 2 years before or after the date of their marriage registration. In a more direct move to help boost birth rates, the government will also increase payments provided to families from around $620 to around $780 per child. The income limit for families eligible was also raised from around $31,000 to nearly $55,000. In addition, taxpayers can qualify for tax credit rates that amount to 15% of medical expenses that exceeded 3% of their total income. The tax credit limit of around $5,500, however, will no longer apply to children under the age of 6 starting next year. It's also not just people that are benefiting.
VAT exemptions will be applied to more than 100 types of pet medical expenses starting October this year.
The government is also looking to improve people's livelihoods. It will raise income tax deduction rates by 10 percentage points for credit card expenditure between April and December next year at traditional markets and on recreational activities. The 2023 tax reform bill, which will be submitted to the National Assembly in September, is expected to go into effect next year. 이수진, Arirang News.
Following the recent extreme rain here in the country, lawmakers passed the Rivers Act revision as a response to the catastrophic flooding and landslides that resulted in nearly 50 deaths. Our political correspondent Kim Jung-sil reports.
I declare that the amendment has been passed.
A revision to the Rivers Act intended to support the implementation of anti-flooding measures was passed by the National Assembly with 249 votes in favor out of the 250 lawmakers present. The bill was passed in a plenary session with an overwhelming approval rate regardless of political party. The swift decision came about 2 weeks after catastrophic flooding and landslides in central South Korea took nearly 50 lives and ruined people's homes and livelihoods. At least 14 people died when a river burst its banks due to heavy rain and flooded an underpass in Osong in a matter of minutes. Until now, local governments were responsible for these regional rivers and they experienced budgetary problems for maintenance and repair.
The amendment allows the state to provide financial support for the maintenance of designated regional rivers currently conducted by local governments whose water levels may change due to potential flooding downstream by rivers maintained by the state.
The Assembly also passed revisions to water system management and support for residents near the Keumgang, Nakdonggang, Yeongsangang, and Seomjingang rivers. With the revision setting the legal framework for water-related disasters such as droughts and floods, these residents can use the water system management budget for disaster prevention measures. The revised laws will be enacted as soon as the government publishes it. The legislation for the Anti-Flooding Act in urban areas, on the other hand, was not discussed at Thursday's plenary session. The main part of the act is to establish a National Countermeasures Committee under the Environment Minister and to systematically promote urban flood prevention plans with other related ministries. The National Assembly Legislation and Judiciary Committee said since it's a legislative action, more discussion is needed, but it also added that the goal is to process the legislation at next month's plenary session. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Much of Korea is enduring the toughest time of the year with intense heat continuing to sear more parts under heat wave alerts. And afternoon temperatures are hovering at 35 degrees Celsius this afternoon. It's a steamy one with scattered showers in the forecast. There will be 5 to 40 millimeters of rain this afternoon, possibly getting more than 60 millimeters, along with thunder and lightning. Despite the chance of rain, we also need to stay safe in the sun. Have your sunblock and sunglasses ready. And if you're in Korea, I highly suggest that you get an umbrella that gives both sun and rain protection and keep it handy around this time. Drink plenty of water and take regular breaks when going outdoors. And take those vitamins to keep your energy up. Heat will linger through the night. We'll have a similar weather pattern to today through the weekend. It won't get any cooler for the next couple of weeks, so take good care. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Now back on the historic high temperatures, they're also heating up price pressure. Over in Europe, an extreme heat wave is pushing up prices of olive oil to record levels amid a poor harvest in Spain, the world's largest producer of olives. Extreme rain is sparking similar concerns in Asia. India is seeing a tomato crisis with prices soaring 400%, and bodyguards even spotted at shops. Climate-flation, as it is being called, is when climate affects crop production and prices. And the European Central Bank projects food inflation to hit 3% by 2035, the price we'll need to pay for warming up the planet. That is all for today. Thanks for watching.